Hello, everyone. Let's continue on with the story of A Thousand Boy Kisses by Tillie Cole. Deciding to go and sit with them while I waited for Jory, I opened the door and stepped inside. I was barely 3 steps in when I regretted ever coming to this party. 3 couches dominated the small room. Ruby and Deacon occupied one. Judson and some of the football team sprawled over another. But it was the third couch I couldn't tear my eyes off. No matter how much I commanded my feet to move, they refused. Avery was sitting on the couch, drinking from her cup. An arm was around her shoulders. Avery was tracing patterns on the hand that was hanging over her chest. I knew what that hand felt like. I knew how it felt to be under the protective shelter of that arm. And I felt my heart shatter as I moved my eyes to the boy who sat by her side. As if feeling the heavy weight of my stare, he looked up. His hand stopped, halfway to his mouth. Drink halfway to his mouth. Tears filled my eyes. Understanding Roon would have moved on from me was hard enough to bear. Seeing him like this brought another level of pain that I never ever thought was possible. Puppy, are you okay? Ruby's concerned voice suddenly rang across the room, forcing me to break away from the car crash I was just witnessing. Forcing a smile toward Ruby, I whispered, "Yes, I'm fine." Feeling my legs shake from the unwanted attention of everyone in the room, I managed to step away toward the door, but as I did, I saw Avery turn in for a kiss. As the final part of my heart broke, I turned and fled the room before I could witness that kiss. I pushed into the hallway and ran to the nearest room I could find. Frantically turning the handle, I pushed through into the semi-darkness of a laundry room. I slammed the door and leaned against the washer, unable to keep myself from bending at the waist and letting the tears pour. I fought back the sickness rising up my throat as I desperately fought to wipe the offensive image from my head. During these past 2 years, I thought I'd endured all facets of pain, but I was wrong. I was so wrong. Because nothing could compare with the pain of seeing the one you love in the arms of another. Nothing could compare to a promised lips betrayal of a kiss. My hand clutched at my stomach. As I fought to drag in a much-needed breath, the handle of the door began to turn. "Don't! Go away!" I had started to shout, but before I could turn and force the door shut, someone pushed through, slamming the door in their wake. My heart raced when I realized I was trapped in this room with someone else, but when I turned around and saw who had entered, all the blood drained from my face. I staggered back until my back hit the wall beside the washer. The flames from the fire pit outside illuminated the dark room, enough that I could clearly see who had invaded my moment of weakness, the same boy who caused it. Roon stood before me, beside the closed door, reaching out. He flipped the lock. I swallowed as his face turned back to look at me. His jaw was tense, and his blue eyes were firmly fixed on me. His stare was ice cold. My mouth went dry. Roon took a step forward, his tall, broad body closing in on me. The pounding of my heart swept the blood through my veins, its heady sound roaring in my ears. As he approached, my eyes lowered to take in Roon's mostly bare arms. His toned, lean muscles were corded by the tension from his balled fists. The black t-shirt showcased his firm torso. His smooth skin still retained the tint of a fading tan. In the signature move that always brought me to my knees, he lifted a hand and raked back his hair from his face. Swallowing hard, I tried to find the courage to push past him and run away, but Roon walked forward until there was no way out for me. I was trapped. My eyes were wide as he focused on me. Roon moved forward until we were merely inches apart. This close, I could feel the heat radiating from his body. This close, I could smell his cool scent, the one that always brought me comfort, the one that took me back to lazy summer days spent in the Blossom Grove, the one that brought back in full technicolor the final night when we made love. I felt my cheeks flood with heat as he leaned in close. I smelled the faint hint of tobacco on his clothes and a trace of spearmint on his warm breath. My fingers twitched at my sides as I gazed at the stubble on his jaw and chin. I wanted to reach out and touch it. Truthfully, I yearned to raise my hand and run a finger over his forehead, down his cheeks, and across his perfect lips. But as soon as I thought of those lips, the pain sliced back through my heart. I turned my head, closing my eyes. He had touched Avery with those lips. He had broken me by giving away those lips. Those lips were supposed to be mine forever. I felt him close in until our chests almost brushed. I felt his arm rise over my head, landing on the wall above me, crowding every inch of my personal space, and I felt strands of his long hair drift across my cheek. Rune's breathing was labored, his minty breath ghosting across my face. I squeezed my eyes even tighter. I felt him so impossibly close, but it was no use. Of their own accord, and ruled by my heart, my eyes slowly opened, and I turned my head, our gazes crashing together. My breath caught in my throat as the shadows from the fire outside flickered over his face. Then my breathing seemed to stop entirely when one of his hands moved from above my head, traveling hesitantly down to stroke over my hair. As soon as I felt him take a strand between his fingers, shivers broke out over my body, and butterflies swooped around my stomach. I sensed he wasn't faring any better. Deep exhales and the tensing of his jaw were clear giveaways. I stared at his handsome face as he studied mine, both of us taking in the effects of the last 2 years, the changes, yet better still, the aspects that were completely familiar. Then, when I wasn't sure my confused heart could take any more, his gentle touch left the safety of my hair to drift onto my face, and passed feather-light fingers over the apples of my cheeks. His fingers stopped as he whispered one word, one emotionally packed word, in the most painfully desperate, gravelled voice, Poppyman. A teardrop escaped from my eye and splashed onto his hand. Poppyman, Rune's perfect name for me. My Poppy, his girl, for infinity, forever always. A lump clawed in its rapid way up my throat as that sweet word sailed into my ears, piercing my soul. I tried in earnest to chase it down, to join the rest of the pain of the last 2 years, but overpowered and totally defeated, I could not, and a long caged sob slipped out. With Rune so close, I never stood a chance. As the loud cry escaped my lips, Rune's eyes lost their coldness and softened to shine with unshed tears. His head tipped forward, and he pressed his forehead to mine, bringing his fingers down to press over my lips. I breathed, he breathed, and against my better judgment, I let myself pretend that the last 2 years had never happened. I let myself pretend that he hadn't moved away, that I hadn't had to move too, that all the pain and the suffering had never been felt. And the bottomless black void that had replaced my heart was filled with light, the brightest light possible, Rune's love, his touch, and his kisses. But this wasn't our reality. Someone banged at the laundry room door, and reality came crashing back, like a storm-whipped wave dropping onto a rain-lashed beach. Rune, are you in there? A female voice called, a voice I recognized as Avery's. Rune's eyes flew open as Avery's knocking grew louder. He immediately drew back, watching me. Lifting my hand, I wiped at my tears. Please, just let me go. I tried to sound confident. I wanted to say more, but I had nothing left within me, no strength to keep up this pretense. It was hurt. I was hurt. It was written on my face for all to see. Placing my hand on Rune's hard chest, I pushed him away, needing to get out. He let me move him from my pet, only to grip my hand in his just before I reached the door. I closed my eyes, trying to gather the strength to turn to him again. When I did, more tears fell. Rune was staring at our joined hands, his long dark blonde lashes almost black with restrained tears. Rune, I whispered. His eyes snapped up at the sound of my voice. Please, I begged, as Avery knocked again. He held on tighter. Rune, Avery called louder. I know you're in there. I took a step closer to Rune. He watched my every move with a deep intensity. As I reached his chest, I looked up, allowing his hand to keep its hold on mine. I met his eyes, recognizing the confusion on his face, and lifted up onto my tiptoes. I brought my free hand to his mouth and ran the pads of my fingers over his full bottom lip. I smiled with sadness, remembering how they felt pressed against mine. I traced his defined Cupid's bow, letting the tears fall as I said, "It killed me when I cut you off, Rune. It killed me not knowing what you were doing on the other side of the Atlantic." I inhaled shakily. "But nothing has ever hurt me like seeing you kiss that girl." Rune paled, his cheeks becoming ashen. I shook my head. "I have no right to be jealous. This is all my fault. Everything. I know that, yet I'm so jealous, so hurt, that I felt like I could die from this pain." I lowered my hand from his mouth. Looking up at him, begging with my eyes, I added, "So please, please let me go. I can't be here, not right now." Rune didn't move. I could see the shock on his face. Using this to my advantage, I pulled my hand from his and immediately unlocked the door. Without looking back or taking time to pause, I burst through, pushing past Avery, who was waiting angrily in the hallway. And I ran past Ruby and Jory, past Deacon and Justin, who had all gathered in the hallway to watch the unfolding drama. I ran through the many students drunk on their feet. I ran until I burst out the door into the cool night air, and then I ran again. I simply ran as fast as I could, as far away from Rune as I could manage. "Rune," I heard a high-pitched voice shrill in the distance, followed by a male voice which added, "Where are you going, man? Rune!" But I didn't let it deter me. Taking a sharp right, I saw the entrance to the park. It was dark and the park wasn't well lit, but it was the shortcut home. Right now, I'd give anything to be home. The gate was open. I let my feet lead the way over the dark tree-lined path, carrying me deeper into the center of the park. My breathing was labored. My feet hurt as the soles pounded the hard asphalt through my belly flats. I turned left, heading for the Blossom Grove, when I heard footsteps behind me. Suddenly frightened, I turned my head. Rune was sprinting after me. My heart raced faster, but this time it had nothing to do with exertion, and everything to do with that look of determination on Rune's face. Rapidly, Rune was gaining on me. I ran for a few more yards, then I realized it was no use. As I entered the Blossom Grove, a place he knew so well, I slowed to a walk, finally bringing myself to a complete stop. A moment later, I heard Rune enter the grove of empty trees. I heard his hard breath hammering the cool air. I felt him move behind me. Slowly, I spun on my heel and faced Rune. Both hands were in his hair, gripping the strands. His blue eyes were haunted, tortured. The air around us crackled with tension as we stared at one another in silence, chest heaving, cheeks flushed. Then Rune's gaze dropped to my lips, and he inched forward. He took 2 steps and a bit out a single harsh question. "Why?" He ground his teeth together as he waited for my answer. I dropped my gaze, tears filling my eyes. I shook my head and begged, "Please, don't." Rune ran his hand down my face. The stubborn expression I knew so well spread across his features. "No. God, Papi, why? Why did you do it?" I was momentarily distracted by the thickness of his accent, a raspier husk in his already low, gravelled voice. As a child over the years, here his Norwegian accent had diminished some, but now his English was overlain by a heavy Nordic edge. It reminded me of the day we met outside his house, aged 5. But as I saw his face redden with anger, I was quickly reminded that right now that didn't matter. We weren't 5 anymore. Nothing was innocent. Too much had happened. And I still couldn't tell him. "Papi," he insisted, his voice rising in volume as he stepped even closer. "Why the hell did you do it? Why did you never call me back? Why did you all move? Where the hell have you been? What the hell happened?" Rune began to pace, his muscles bunching under his t-shirt. A cold wind blew through the grove and he raked back his hair. Stopping dead, he faced me and spat out, "You promised. You promised me that you'd wait for me to come back. Everything was fine until one day I called and you didn't answer. I called and I called, but you never replied. Not a text, nothing." He moved until his booted feet were right against mine, towering over me. "Tell me right now." His skin was mottled with the redness born of his anger. "I deserve to goddamn know." I flinched at the aggression in his voice, flinched at the venom in his words, flinched at the stranger standing before me. The old Rune would never have spoken to me like this, but then I reminded myself this wasn't the Rune of old. I can't," I stuttered, barely above a whisper. Lifting my eyes, I saw the incredulous look on his face. "Please, Rune," I begged, "don't push this. Just leave it." I swallowed and forced myself to say, "Leave us. Leave us in the past. We should move on." Rune's head snapped back as though I had punched him. Then he laughed. He laughed, but the sound held no humor. It was laced with fury, coated with rage. Rune stepped one pace backward. His hands shook at his sides, and he laughed one more time. Icily, he demanded, "Tell me." I shook my head, trying to protest. He lifted his hands to his hair in frustration. "Tell me," he repeated. His voice had lowered an octave and radiated menace. This time I didn't shake my head. Sadness had rendered me motionless. Sadness at seeing Rune like this. He was always quiet and withdrawn. His mama had told me on more than one occasion that Rune had always been a sullen child. She had always feared he would give her trouble. She had told me that his innate predisposition had been to snap at people and to keep himself to himself. Even as a child, she noticed an air of moodiness about him, his inclination to be negative instead of positive. "But then he found you," she said. "He found you. You taught him, through your words and actions, that life didn't always have to be so serious, that life was to be lived, that life was one great adventure, to be lived well and to the fullest." His mama had been right all along. I realized as I watched the darkness exude from his body that this was the Rune Mrs. Christiansen had expected, no, feared he would become. This was the innate moodiness she knew was harbored below the surface of her son. A predilection. The darkness, not light. Staying quiet, I decided to turn away, to leave Rune alone with his rage. Moonbeam hearts and sunshine smiles. I ran my mama's mantra through my head. I squeezed my eyes shut and forced myself to repel the pain trying to flood in. Tried to stave off this ache in my chest, the ache that told me what I didn't want to believe, that I had done this to Rune. I made to move forward, to leave, self-preservation seizing control. As I did, I felt desperate fingers wrap around my wrists and spin me back around. Rune's pupils had all but consumed his crystal blue irises. "No. Stand right here and tell me." He took in a long breath and, losing all control, he shouted, "Tell me why the hell you left me all alone." This time his anger was unbounded. This time his hard words contained the force of a slap to the face. The blossom grove before me blurred. It took me a while to realize that it was my tears clouding my vision. A tear fell to my cheek. Rune's dark gaze didn't waver. "Who are you?" I whispered. I shook my head as Rune continued to stare, a slight tightening at the corner of his eyes, the only evidence that my words had any effect. "Who are you right now?" I glanced down at his fingers, still around my wrists, feeling my throat close. I said, "Where's the boy I love?" Risking one more look at his face, I whispered, "Where's my Rune?" Suddenly, Rune ripped his fingers from my arm, as though my skin was scalding her to the touch. A nasty laugh spilled from his lips as he stared me down. His hand lifted to delicately smooth down my hair, a contradictory softness in the gesture compared to the venom with which he spoke. "You want to know where that boy went?" I swallowed as he searched every part of my face, every feature but my eyes. "You want to know where your Rune went?" His lips curled in disgust, as if my Rune was someone unworthy. as if my room wasn't worth all the love that I had for him. Leaning in, he met my eyes, his stare so severe that shivers darted down my spine. Harshly, he whispered, "That Rune died when you left him all alone." I tried to turn away, but Rune jumped in my path, making it impossible to escape his scathing cruelty. I dragged in a hurt breath, but Rune wasn't done. I could see in his eyes that he was far from done. "I waited for you," he said. "I waited and waited for you to call." To explain, I called everyone I knew back here, trying to find you, but you'd vanished. Gone to care for some sick aunt I know that doesn't exist. Your daddy wouldn't talk to me when I tried. You all blocked me out. His lips tightened as he relived the pain. I saw it. I saw it in his every move, his every word. He had been transported back to the painful place. I told myself to be patient, that you would explain everything in time. But as the days turned into weeks and the weeks turned into months, I stopped waiting with hope. Instead, I let in the pain. I let in the darkness that you created. As the year came and went, my letters and messages went unanswered. I let the pain take hold of me until there was nothing left of old Rune. Because I couldn't look in the mirror one day more. Couldn't walk in the shoes of that Rune for one more damn day. Because that was the Rune that had you. That Rune was the Rune that had Poppyman. That Rune was the one with a full heart. Your half and mine. But your half abandoned me. It left and allowed what I have now to take root. Darkness, pain, a shitload of anger. Rune leaned in until his breath washed over my face. You made me like this, Poppy. The Rune you knew died when you turned into a bitch and broke every promise you ever made. I staggered backwards, unbalanced by his words that were like bullets to my heart. Rune watched me without showing guilt. I saw no sympathy in his glare, just a cold, hard truth. He meant every word. Then, taking a lean from him, I let anger take hold. I handed the reins to all the anger I felt. I rushed forward and pushed at Rune's hard chest, not expecting him to move. I was surprised when he fell back a single step, before quickly regaining his ground. But I didn't stop. I flew at him again, hot tears streaming down my face. I pushed and I pushed at his chest. Firmly grounded, Rune didn't budge, so I stuck out. A sob escaped from my mouth as I hit his torso, the muscles bunching beneath his t-shirt as I released everything that had built up inside me. "I hate you," I screamed at the top of my lungs. "I hate you for this. I hate this person you are now. I hate him. I hate him." I choked down my screams and I stumbled backwards exhausted. Seeing his glare still firmly aimed at me, I used the very last drop of my energy to shout, "I was saving you." I breathed deeply for a few moments, then added quietly, "I was saving you, Rune. I was saving you from the pain. I was saving you from feeling helpless like everyone else I loved." Rune's dark blonde eyebrows became a hard line over his eyes. Confusion distorted his beautiful face. I stepped back one more time, because I couldn't see you. I couldn't bear the thought of you seeing what was going to happen to me. I couldn't bear to do it to you when you were so far away. Sobs left my throat, so many sobs that my chest began to wheeze through exertion. I coughed, clearing my throat and moving forward to where Rune was standing still, like a statue. Laying my hand over my heart, I said in a croaked voice, "I had to fight. I had to give it my all. I had to try. And I wanted you along with me more than you could ever imagine." My wet lashes began to dry in the cool breeze. "You would have dropped everything to try to get to me. You already hated your parents, hated your life in Oslo. I could hear it every time we spoke. You had grown so bitter. How could you have ever possibly coped with this?" My head throbbed, a pounding headache taking hold. I needed to leave. I needed to leave it all. I backed away. Rune remained deathly still. I wasn't even sure he had blinked. "I need to go, Rune." I gripped on my chest, knowing that the last piece of me would break with what I said next. "Let's just leave this here." In the blossom grove we loved so much. Let us end whatever we had, whatever we were. My voice had almost faded to nothing, but with a final push I whispered, "I'll stay away from you. You stay away from me. We'll finally put us to rest, because it has to be this way." I ducked my eyes, now wanting to see the hurt in Rune's face. "I can't bear all the pain." I laughed weakly. "I need moonbeam hearts and sunshine smiles," I smiled to myself. "It's what's keeping me going. I won't stop believing in a beautiful world. I won't let it break me. I force myself to look at Rune, and I won't be the cause of any more hurt for you. As I turned my head, I saw a fissure of agony fracture Rune's expression. But I didn't stall. I ran. I ran fast, just managing to pass my favorite tree when Rune grabbed my arm. When Rune grabbed my arm and swung me around again. What? He demanded. What the hell are you talking about? He was breathing harshly. You just explained nothing. You spout about saving me and sparing me. But from what? What did you think I couldn't handle? Rune, please. I begged and pushed him away. He was on me in a flash, hands on my shoulders, anchoring me in place. Answer me, he shouted. I pushed from him again. Let me go. My heart raced with trepidation. My skin prickled with goosebumps. I turned to go again, but his hands held me still. I struggled and struggled, trying to get away, for once trying to flee the tree whose shelter always brought me so solace. Let me go, I shouted again. Rune leaned in. No, tell me, explain yourself, he shouted back. Rune. Explain, he shouted, cutting me off. I shook my head faster, trying to no avail to escape. Please, please, I begged. Poppy. No. Explain. I'm dying, I screamed in the silent grove, unable to take any more. I'm dying, I added breathlessly. I'm dying. As I clutched my chest, trying to catch my breath, the enormity of what I'd done slowly filtered into my brain. My heart pounded. It pounded from the onslaught of panic. It pounded and raced with the terrifying knowledge of what I just admitted, of what I just confessed. I continued to stare at the ground. Somewhere in my brain, it registered that Rune's hands had frozen on my shoulders. As I felt the heat from his palms, I also realized that they were shaking. I heard his breath, dragging and labored. I forced myself to raise my gaze and lock on Rune's. His eyes were wide and racked with pain. At that moment, I hated myself, because that look in his eyes, that haunted, gutting stare, was the reason I had broken my promise to him 2 years ago. It was why I had to set him free. As it turned out, I had only imprisoned him with bars of rage instead. Poppy, he whispered, accent heavy, as his face paled to the whitest of white. I have Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's advanced and it's terminal. My voice trembled as I added, I have a matter of months left to live, Rune. There's nothing anyone can do. I waited. I waited to see what Rune had to say, but he said nothing. Instead, he backed away. His eyes traveled over my face, searching for any sign of deception. When none was found, he shook his head. A soundless no left his mouth. Then he ran. He turned his back to me, and he ran. It was many minutes before I found the strength to move. It was 10 minutes after that when I walked through the door of my house, where my mama and daddy were sitting with the Christiansens. But it was only seconds after seeing me when my mama rushed to where I stood, and I fell into her arms, where I broke my heart for the heart I'd just broken, the one I'd always strived to save. We'll leave it out there for today, and we'll continue on in the next video.